Hi folks, and in this video what we're going to look at is going back to basics and doing some serious database development. Basically, going through the code, I had some certain issues of players' data and information going from one player's to another. I have actually fixed that, and it is a bit of a long fix in order to do it. There we go, I'm just purchasing some games for some of the users. There's nothing in there now. I can buy that game. Excellent. And if I then go back to Simon Free, there we go. Right, so actually the way that this system's being created now is actually very complex. It goes into some very deep principles of database development to the extent I'm going to go over them for you right now. So the clear things to be aware of are I've extended first of all the purchased amount of games just to have a load of blank entries at this moment in time, just in case. All the other information on the account structure is exactly the same, but now I've just added a load of empty arrays just in case we actually need them for the amount of purchased games. So the way that we are doing purchased games previously was we were putting them all into a single array, which was then outputting the said games over different numbers, and it was basically confusing the whole system. Multiple objects thought they were owned by different users, and there was no actual system in store for it. So I went and redesigned it a little bit by creating this bit of code here. Now it looks a little simple and complex at the same time. Basically, it does something quite complex indeed. What we have is, first of all, we are working out, so this was just a add or an append or a set to an array beforehand. I've actually just cut that bit out straight away after we work out how many credits away from the total value. After that point in time, this is of course on the till, we're now working out if we can add the games to a list. So that being said and done, what's happened here is the following. I'm now using a get statement to get the purchased games from the current user index, which is working out basically where they are and which games are owned by which user index. So at the moment, 0 is user index for Bob, 2 is for Simon, 3. This then goes effectively to a base append. This is appending 2 strings. Now, the interesting thing about this appending strings is I've used something called a join string array. Now, a join string array basically takes what's within the current shopping basket as an array element. It then separates it by using a separator. This separator is basically separating individual words. So if you have a space, if I used a comma in here, I could put that in. But for now, I'm only using spaces. So what's happening is whenever the data reads a space from the current shopping basket, here will be empty. So the objects within the shop. So here, you'll notice all these objects also have little spaces that I've added in after their names. What happens is it will then allocate this information and then break down this array as such. Now, what we're doing is instead of adding or inserting information to an array, we're now setting the elements within the array. So what we're actually going to do is take the purchased games from the index of our current user index. So remember that's 0 for Bob, it's 2 for Simon, 3. And then we're adding these items, and that is the current purchased games and also an appendix, so adding on to that any sourced indexed array elements from the current objects. So this is anything that we've just bought is then being broken up and added to this array element. So what's happening is all this data is being made into one big array separated by a ton of separators. Interesting. Let's just put it that way. This means that if I then go to the account details, there we go, where we're actually putting out the information for, that's on this view here, of which games we own, we're now doing it in a very different way. I've gutted the original code and I've basically put this information here. It's getting the information from the shopping game mode as always. It's then going to an account structure to find the purchase games. Now we're doing a get to find the index. So remember, 0 is Bob, 2 is Simon Free. Then we're doing this lovely piece of code here, which is a parse into array, which is basically taking the stringed data from this array. So if it's got all 3 games, it's taking them in that order. It's then cutting them up depending on if there is a delimit on it. This delimit is whenever there's a space. So much the same as on our till, we're separating the objects by spaces. We're doing exactly the same when we're now outputting them. And this, of course, we've done it for all 3 of these. So this is 0, 1, and 2. And we've done that by then getting element 0 from this array, outputting it here, element 1 from this array, doing the same, and element 2 from this array. And now, folks, we have a decent working system where I can actually now assign data to all different characters for different games that they're going to buy, and it doesn't then set data across from one character to another, so the users all have now their own separate accounts. And basically we've gone about creating a database within Unreal, which is quite an interesting feat, I can tell you. So there we have it, folks. We now have a perfectly fine and working database with no issues at all. If anyone has any questions, feel free to send me an email and we'll go through what I've actually done and changed. But overall, it's not too overly complicated. It was just on our account structure, adding a load of empty elements for the purchase games. On the till, adding a set array element in, which is then connected to the purchased games, an index to the current user index. We're then using a get statement from the purchase games from the current user index to work out which indexed array elements we're using. We're then appending, and we're getting the current object names, joining using a join string array with a separator, basically attaching all of them together, putting them through that way. And then within our actual account screen, we've just set it up so we're getting the purchase games, we're getting it from the current user index, almost like an account number in this sense. We're then parsing it into an array, we're then breaking it down, and then we're getting the correct element for the correct block of text that we want. And that, folks, is how we create a user account within Unreal, which works effectively for every individual user. Thanks for watching. Bye.